check. This says we're on, but I don't see where. There we go. Good morning, everyone. If you've somehow managed to stumble across this inadvertently and not knowing who I am, my name is Dennis Misigoy. I'm a candidate for the U.S. Senate seat here in the state of Florida, coming up in the 2022 election. So, doing a little bit of live streaming here, seeing if I can connect with people a little bit better than maybe just our little text comments and stuff on the norm on social media. And if we get some good questions, I answer them. Actually, I want to start off with kind of trying to get back to one which I can't even explain why I'm, not quite giving the answer that I'd like to give when someone asked that question, because my mind was in a couple different places, and of course, just trying to interject this in the middle of a work day. It is what it is, man. But one of the things that I got asked when I did the first live stream was just about the sort of typical thing, top 3 issues, and it's funny because it's something that kind of guided some little messaging and stuff I did at the beginning. And actually at the beginning when I tried filing last year for the U.S. House seat back in the district where I used to live. And it's interesting because it's so simple and at least guided by what I think I can call a real good defensible principle, which is basically just focusing on those issues which have like the greatest, or I should say the worst, direct impact on people's lives. And the top 2 first being the still the foreign policy, unending wars, even though we are kind of out of Afghanistan, but still, we've got these drone strikes that are blowing away families and things. But the foreign policy of war and trying to control both the Middle East and impose this sort of one world order with the U.S. as the singular superpower. The foreign policy, because this is where so many people are getting killed. There's a number of other issues you can address also by pulling back in terms of the military spending, in terms of even something as far off, or it may seem as far off as like climate change, but to me really the main thing there is actual innocent people getting killed. Both our soldiers who are sent over there to fight for something that really doesn't have anything to do with America's defense, some that die out in the field, as well the ones who come back either with physical wounds, or obviously we know about the epidemic of suicide among the military. Others have talked about it more at length, but we're talking in the tens of thousands of deaths. It's an epidemic both among veterans and even among active duty. Trying to think when was the last time I saw the numbers, but the last time I saw the numbers, they were basically the highest they had been since they started reporting them. So it suggests we're still on a very bad trend with all of that. So that's number one. Second one really should be right here at home domestically, the war on drugs. This is another one that causes incalculable harm in a myriad of ways. And again, as is so much the case with government, that terrible mentality of we've got to do something. So here's this problem. Here we've got drugs that may be harmful and cause addiction and this and that. And but prohibition is really the worst thing, because first and foremost, it doesn't actually stop the problem. As we know, drugs are readily available and people are able to get their hands on them. There is the problem, though, where drugs have actually become more dangerous because of it, among other things, because now it's dominated by a black market rather than an open, free, competitive market where people can say, well, I want something that's a little bit safer, maybe a little less potent, to where they can measure it out. Instead, the market is dominated by whoever can, number one, get drugs past U.S. authorities and get stuff in or produce it in an environment where it can be closed off enough and they have the violent force. And that's the second part of it, is that they're able to use violent force to secure market share. This is why so many of the disadvantaged communities, poor communities, end up becoming war zones, because that's where these guys set up. And you have so many innocent people caught in the crossfire of this that it's it becomes a nightmare and creates a war zone right here at home. It's incredibly destructive and just harmful to so many lives. And then, of course, we can't possibly forget also the people who are actually getting, who are actually the victims from our own government, which is somebody growing a plant in their house, in particular where you have people using marijuana or even perhaps some other substances to try to treat various illnesses with people in their family. It's just something the government should never be in the middle of, and obviously turning those people into criminals doesn't serve any purpose. It's not moral. It's harmful. It's destructive, and it's really indefensible. It fails on every level. It causes great harm, makes criminals out of people who wouldn't otherwise be, and it doesn't even really solve the problem. It actually makes the problem worse. It doesn't even mitigate the problem. It makes it worse. So that and I'll still go with the economy being another one. That's a really broad one, but it is. I noticed with most recent polls that is something that affects everyone's lives individually, and that's actually even past COVID at this point um, in terms of the in terms of even concern about COVID. The economy is now, at least for the largest portion, it's not a plurality or majority or anything. I should say it's not a majority. It's still, we're talking about maybe 20% because it's split among so many issues. But it is something we need to address, and it's something that's becoming more and more urgent, particularly as the government is engaging in policies that are even more and more disruptive to it. So I'm going to take a few questions. I can see a couple of questions coming in, so I'm going to try and run down what I got here. First one I got from Joe. Should the U.S. government keep troops in Germany, Japan, and Iraq? Absolutely no. Iraq was a mistake to begin with. If it was a mistake to begin with, it's a mistake to continue. It can't have become good. And I recall, I'm trying to think if it was 2018, 2019, actually the Iraqi parliament voted to expel U.S. troops. This is when obviously Trump was still in power, but it's not like Biden has complied with that. If we're actually trying to be friendly and get along with the nations, this isn't Saddam Hussein. This isn't we're chasing weapons of mass destruction. Even though 3/4 of Republicans in the House voted against repealing the AUMF to go into Iraq to stop Saddam Hussein from getting WMDs, the U.S. has no mission there at this point. It didn't have one really before. It was I don't want to rehash it too much, but the U.S. shouldn't be there. As far as Germany and Japan, if not now, then when? If not now, then when? Are we forever to be there with no end? Even if we wanted to be, even if we thought it was a good idea in every other respect, we're fast approaching 30 trillion in debt. Last I saw was 28.9 trillion in debt. This seems a simple thing to cut. And again, if not now, then when? What's the where do you draw a line and say, well, we've done enough, we've put enough money in, we've subsidized, if you really want to think about it, because when you have U.S. soldiers in these places, what do? They're living there, they're going to spend their money there, they're going to, so yeah, absolutely bring them home. Solution to illegal immigration. With immigration, I think there needs to start with a recognition that this system is broken, and you can't just tweak it or say we're going to change how we're going to enforce it or we're going to do this and that. This system has been broken. That's why, and it's been broken pretty much since they put roughly this kind of system in place. I think going back to the 1924 Immigration Act, maybe even a little before. But once you start artificially putting in quotas and saying, well, only this many of this group of people, the problem is rooted in collectivism. Immigrants, just like anybody else, should be treated as individuals. I would definitely recommend something akin to kind of the pre-1924 sort of Ellis Island model. Obviously, I would want to bring in stuff like the old Asian Exclusion Acts or is it Chinese Exclusion Act, but some of that stuff, obviously you wouldn't want to have in there, but the basics of how that process used to work, especially with modern technology, there's no reason why you couldn't have people simply come in through a port, you gather their information, document, you have a port of entry, even on the border, or obviously through ports, airports, and whatnot. You get their papers, their information, you document them, run some kind of background check, figure out, is this a wanted criminal, is this something else? And if they are, you, and obviously if you are, they're carrying some like wildly infectious disease, obviously you try to address that as well and maybe exclude in that case. But other than that, if someone's perfectly fine, nonviolent person, just let them go and work. Let them go and work. Obviously, we talk about the welfare system and things like that, and putting that aside for a moment, it's really just allow peaceful people who want to come here, make a living, just let them do it. If there's a demand for their labor, they're going to find the place where it is. If they don't, they're going to end. They're not going to be able to, and they're not going to want to. I can say with a fair degree of certainty that the overwhelming majority of people who are willing to make these huge treks, they're not doing there to then just, sit on a street corner or wait for a check to come in from somebody else. They're people are taking these huge strides, and abandoning your home completely in this kind of way is not a trivial step. It's a big step, and you do that because you're trying to improve your condition in life, your prospects for the future. So, but I think the key is abandoning. You can't reform the system we have. You got to throw out this bureaucracy. It's also unconstitutional. I'd also point that out, is the fact that if we just simply vote on the basis of what is constitutional, each one of us, and now it's going to get me to the other question we've got here, is that every senator, congressman, the president all vow to uphold and defend the Constitution. So stuff like immigration policy is not authorized by the Constitution. Regulating immigration is not authorized by the Constitution for the federal government. So we really should just be repealing this stuff just on the basis of that. And so, but this is, there needs to start with a recognition that these policies are completely broken. That's why you've had so many times over the many decades where you've had this huge population of undocumented immigrants. I think now is estimated 10 to 20 million at any given point. And you've had to do like these mass amnesties where they kind of have to hit the reset button to get everybody to be okay. So that sort of thing is exemplary of why the system doesn't work, or it shows that the system doesn't work. And if the system doesn't work, why are you going to keep beating your head against the wall trying to make it work? It doesn't work. So let's we gotta just toss that one out, start fresh, and like I say, I think the right way is always, and the moral way, is to treat people as individuals. So let me get the other one I got here from Nathan. How can a U.S. Senator use his or her power to remove government power from D.C. and state capitals and put liberty back in the hands of individual people in their local municipalities? I even would focus just straight on the local individual, and I think, you've got to reassert some of these constitutional protections, not even just things, I always fall back to the Bill of Rights. And for me in particular, you look back at some of those protections, and I'll go back to where we have, where we also have due process. We have that you cannot be deprived of your life, liberty, or property without due process of the law. So, and this will actually sort of address a little bit of Joe's question here too. I think one of the big things we can do is to maybe codify somewhere in federal law. Maybe it would require a constitutional amendment. I don't really think it should, because you have these couple of places in the, and I believe it's also, I'm trying to think if it's also the 14th Amendment, but that also states this whole cannot be deprived of life, liberty, or property. Right now, I think people are effectively deprived of their property through a number of mechanisms, and their liberty. There's no constitutional authority for a lot of the things that the federal government does. And so we got to take those steps as best we can. But I think the first thing each individual senator and stuff can do right now, as an immediate measure, I think would be to defund any of the departments and agencies that are right now violating those liberties. Every program we have, every aspect of it that's right now taking an active role. Obviously, we want to repeal that, so you would propose legislation to repeal some of these things. But also, even just in the shorter term, as you're passing in, as annual budgets come up, we offer amendments to exclude funding for these things. If those amendments don't pass, and funding for DEA and ATF and ICE and all these alphabet soup agencies, If all those things are still in there, you vote against that budget. You don't compromise on these things. And I think that's the key is for what we've had for the last 100+ years has been, well, we want this and you want that from the two parties, and everybody gets everything they want except for freedom. And so, because we keep on expanding the power of government to do these sort of things, and really it's unsustainable. It's led to so much of this problem. And so just trying to cut off every little piece of that we can. Again, repeal it if you can. If you can't repeal it, at least don't allow them to be funded. If they're not funded, they're not going to be able to function, and it gets us a step closer. But the one thing you cannot do is compromise on it and allow to just kick this can down the road, excuse me, so that you can so that this just system perpetuates and we end up with nothing changing or nothing getting better, let's say. All right, I'm pushing my time here, but I want to try and get these questions. So we've got what would be your plan for Social Security? I mean, ideally, you do need to kind of think about transitioning off. I think we've conditioned a lot of older generation, obviously, to be dependent on it. People who've been working for decades and decades have reached that sort of retirement age and we've told them, or I should say we told them, or at least the government told them, that they can depend on this or that they'll have this. I'm not really comfortable with kind of pulling the rug out from under them, even though the system is so awful. I think ideally what you want to do, and what I want to do in terms of this and pretty much any other program that's geared towards trying to take care of people, I want to render them obsolete. So to me, the target is really, for one thing, you want to give people who want to opt out, allow people to opt out. Everybody should have a choice, and that deals with pretty much almost any kind of issue where government's involved. And obviously, this is one of those ones that's very straightforward. Just like with school choice, give people a choice. People should have a choice. There's nothing ever wrong with giving people a choice. So simple as that. But longer term, I think you also need to take the steps that will. You need to take the steps to eliminate the perception, or not just the perception, but take away some of the things that have created the perceived need for this. I guess I'll say one of the ones is monetary policy. Again, we talk about the sort of steady inflation that's been going on with the US dollar for the last 100 or so years since the Fed's been involved. The decline in the value of the dollar means that somebody can't just save money and then retire with their savings. It means that you save and you retire, and your money is worth, some small fraction of what it really was when you earned it. And so that is also something that makes it really difficult, especially for the average person who's not a savvy investor, who's not going to be all these sort of things, to be able to, who's not going to be able to, necessarily generate some big return. You got to give them the opportunity to be able to just save their money and have it be worth what they earned for it. I think that'd also go a long way in terms of eliminating the perceived need for it. Obviously, also deregulating and allowing other people to provide free market solutions to fill in that gap as well. So that's another one. First bill. I'm trying to think. I thought of this before, and I'm trying to think. It's I'm drawing a little bit of a blank now. Maybe I might have to come back to this one, but I'm trying to think. I'd probably go with one of those first two issues I brought up a little bit earlier, in terms of now, since and you know what, let's go ahead with the second one, the drug issue, because the drug war, because foreign policy, I shouldn't say foreign policy, but certainly, You know what? No, there's not necessarily a reason because Congress has never declared war. It hasn't declared war since World War II, so maybe we would do something in terms of that. But I think obviously the more direct and straightforward thing to do, um, owing to the war on drugs, is that there really is nothing in the Constitution that authorizes the federal government to prevent people from possessing, consuming, or producing any substance. And so, on account of things like that, and for a number of other reasons, I would push on the constitutional basis a bill, and because everyone has taken that. So I would probably try and go ahead and try to repeal, was it the Controlled Substances Act and all other relevant legislation to reassert that individuals have the right to own and consume whatever substance, certainly from the federal government's perspective. Obviously, state governments under the 10th Amendment can do what they want, but I think that would be a big step on my end. So I would probably go with that first. What do I think all voters can do as a positive? I think the biggest thing is to not compromise, not accept a lesser evil. Voting for a lesser evil is still voting for evil, and if you want evil, look, we've got plenty of evil. We have had an overabundance of evil in our government doing very, very evil things, and the kind of stuff that I described initially. I mean, we even saw, and it was a good reminder, I guess, as the whole Afghanistan withdrawal was going on, and we had the case with the drone bombing and the targeted drone strike, which is supposed to be the better, more efficient way, except that we bombed like a family, and it was like what 7 or 10 people, and 2/3 of them were kids. It's immoral, it's wrong, and if we recognize that those things are evil, and we recognize that the people that are doing it, we to the point where it's cliche, we call it evil. We say we're voting for the lesser evil. That is one thing, and then that's as a voter, you just don't tolerate that. Now, you need to do a little bit more than just that, though, because to be honest with us, and it's the reason I have the link in there. It's not a given that you'll have necessarily a better option. Part of the reason why it's important to me to try to run here, why I filed, is that back in 2018. We didn't even have another option. All we had on the ballot was Bill Nelson and Rick Scott for U.S. Senator, and I think we need something better. But if we wait till Election Day, it's going to be too late. So that's why I'm here trying to do this, and that's whoa, I think it got out there for a sec. But it's why I decided to take action and get involved, and it's why and so I need so we can't just wait for Election Day just working as voters. We need to be voters, but we need to be more than just voters, put it that way, because no voter is just a voter. Each one of us can take action beyond that, and so that's what I'm trying to do, and encourage anyone else who feels the same way, has this recognition, to this thing's all to do this, to deal with this system and to get us where we want to go. Let me see. Local, state, and federal. Obviously, also, if you're a voter, you're eligible to run for something. And if you can vote for something, you can run for something. And if you can find those opportunities as well, I definitely encourage you to do it. I haven't talked about it on these live streams, but and maybe I'll save it for the next one because I'm a bit past the time I wanted to be on. But first thing I did was run for a local seat on a community development district where I used to live. So if you have those opportunities and you find those opportunities, I definitely encourage you guys to do it. Those are the obvious ones. Maybe I'm gonna save some of these questions for the next round. Maybe I'll try and do this again on Thursday if you guys are well. We'll I'm gonna cut this off, man. I'm gonna save these questions. I'm not gonna ignore these questions, guys. I'm gonna pull these questions up, and I'm gonna start off with this stuff on Thursday. Okay. Thank you guys all for being on with me. Taking a little time out of the workday. I hope it break up the monotony a little bit, and we'll keep going. Thank you guys, and talk to y'all soon. Bye.